Well, hello there, how is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fabulous, fabulous Friday. That's it, baby, it's Friday and we made it through the week. TFI Friday and all that. And you're looking amazing, by the way. So the week has obviously been kind to you. But we can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, can't we? It's been one of those weeks. Now, there is a couple of things to kind of go over before we get into the meat and potatoes. Just a couple of things that stemmed from document drops and some things that I've seen in the comments. So look, the first thing I want to address is, yes, there has indeed been a change of dates. There was supposed to be a court hearing today, and that is not now happening. It has been postponed till October. See the paperwork that we've got on the screen here. And yes, they do love a delay. They do love changing things, don't they? You have to wonder whether all these little delays are to try and allow the prosecution to get a few more ducks in a row. But look, that's speculation on my part. So, yes, we'll have to wait till October to see whether there will indeed be a dismissal. I know some people are completely against thinking that's going to happen. Some people think that there is a good possibility of it happening, and some people don't know, and likely at this stage just simply don't care. What else have we got? We have got some comments that have come up surrounding Steve Gonsalves and Steve Gonsalves, what they believe is potentially his brother. Look, Nathan D. Gonsalves was someone who was involved in, it would seem like there was a meth distribution setup. They were using a confidential informant to try and set this person up, and it kind of all fell apart. If you follow the chain of this person, it seems that this person has been involved in domestic violence and all sorts of things. You know what it's like when you start putting their names down and start looking into them, it just goes awry. This meth situation, I believe, happened back in 2007, something like that. And then the name cropped up again back in 2021, when the only paperwork that I can see says about Nathan D. Gonsalves being a transient man, and it would appear that was involved in the death of another person. The way it reads, it's almost like it was his father or someone's father close to him, I don't know. But from what I can see with respect of is that indeed Kaylee's uncle and Steve's brother, I cannot, since trying to find a link that connects those two people. I'm not saying that don't exist, I just physically can't find anything to be able to come out 100% and say that Nathan Gonsalves is indeed related to Steve Gonsalves. What I can say is that around this Nathan D. Gonsalves, there was, when we're talking about the domestic abuse situation, there was a Cheryl Gonsalves who was involved in that. I'm guessing that was who the victim was. I can only see proportions of that. I can't see it all in its entirety. And there is a Steve Gonsalves who is listed in that as well. So again, it could be completely coincidental, and the fact that Joseph Morris is connected to where this information regarding this Nathan and being pushed as Steve's brother seems to have stemmed from, it does raise me to have even more apprehension. But yes, so for those of you who are, because I did see this, like I say, floating around in the comments, are they related? I don't know 100%. Is it a possibility? Yes, it's possible. Is this person currently incarcerated for the death of another? It would appear so, and involved in drugs and narcotics. But what I can say is that there seems to be nothing that would suggest that this situation has anything to do with 1122 King Road. So there we have it. So let's put that one to bed. The third one, before we get into the meat and potatoes, this is like starters. This is like you know, they bring out little starters and you can have them before you deep into the main course, and that was I think it was the reporter room who had said it's bizarre, this channel and some of the stuff they're coming out with. They're saying the sister's speaking, and I couldn't really find anything specifically what the sister had said, just this kind of rumour mill. And again, they're saying that apparently before Bryan Kohberger was arrested, or when he was being arrested, he'd apparently said to his father, "It's their fault that I'm being arrested." And there was no context put into that. There was no even context put into exactly how this YouTube channel had obtained this specific information and corroborated it. And when I look at some of the other information that this channel is pushing out, they are very, very heavily against Bryan Kohberger and trying to, it would seem, angle everything to point in the direction that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. They had pushed the fact that Bryan Kohberger had been arrested, having been grassed up, if you like, by his dad. And they didn't really go into the full context of that. They made it look like that was potentially like trying to say how Bryan Kohberger was as growing up. He was in trouble with the police and that. And someone had even put in the comments to that video specifically asking, because they hadn't seen, why Bryan Kohberger had indeed been sort of arrested and grassed up by his dad. And this content creator just didn't address that. They actually addressed another proportion of that, which I felt further perpetuated the fact that this rarely was just when Bryan Kohberger was much younger. He'd sadly got involved in narcotics and had simply got his sister's phone to steal in order to obtain money for potentially more narcotics. And his dad had gone to the police as an attempt to get his son out of that sort of downward spiral before he started perhaps going elsewhere, and these crimes that at this stage were sort of retained within that family unit would not become worse. And it would appear that this worked, because Bryan Kohberger, well, I say that, up to present day, and what he's accused of, it seems to have worked, because he went into his studies, he seemingly got clean, and here we are where we are. So yeah, there's a bit of a catch-22, I suppose. In one hand, he looks like he turned his life around. On the other hand, it looks like he turned into a raving, lunatic, psychopathic monster. But the jury is out on that. So, meat and potatoes time. So look, I was, as I do quite often, I was looking at the Idaho 4 documentation. It was when I'd seen that there was new documents surrounding this change of date for today's hearing. And I went right back to the start, and I was reading the affidavit. You know, I struggle with that word. I struggle with it. And I found myself reading it, and there was proportions of this that I just felt, I've got it on this pad here. And I felt massively that there was elements of this, especially the statements from what apparently Dylan Mortensen had said, that I just thought to myself, do you know what? Is this all bollocks? Is this all bollocks? Because if you read it, it makes absolutely no sense. So I'm going to go into it here and bring you up what I think. And I want you guys to help me out. Look, it just might be me and my critical mind, and I'm overthinking it, overcomplicating it. But it says, DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of King Road residence were home by 2 a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m. Right, so we've got that far. This is with the exception of Canodal, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, right, well, we're only talking about, there's 6 people in the house, so DM and BF, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, they're the people who have given the statement, so that's 2 of them. So we're talking about the victims, and they're saying they are all in their rooms by 4 a.m. and asleep, well, asleep, or at least in their rooms by 4 a.m, with the exception of Canodal, who's going to be with Ethan, and they've ordered a DoorDash. They've ordered DoorDash food. So you order food, then wait for it, and it turns up at 4 a.m. So I'm thinking, well, that must have been ordered. I don't know what it's like in the US, but when we order food, that can take 45 minutes, an hour to turn up. Do you know what I mean? And from the distance here and being a restaurant, I would imagine that would have been ordered sometime around 3:15 a.m. That's my take on it. So how did Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk know that she'd ordered that DoorDash? How did they know it was her who ordered it? How did they not? How do they know that weren't ordered in this interview when they're saying this? How do they know that it weren't ordered by someone else? And you could argue and say, well, they don't know that. They're not saying that it was Canodal. It's these people who wrote the affidavit who are saying that it's them. And they're saying... Anyway, I digress. I'll get there. I'll get to the point in a second. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. See, this is where I now start to have a problem, because she says, so she was asleep before 4 a.m. because she was woken at 4 a.m. But she's saying the others were asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m. So what time did she fall asleep then? And how, if she was asleep, did she know what the fuck was going on? Because she, in theory, would have fallen asleep before everybody else fell asleep. She woke up, and at one point had said that she woke up and heard noises before she'd gone. She thought there was a party going on. She thought they had guests over. She's come out of her room, told people to shut up, so on and so forth. She says then it was altered, and we've got this dog situation. She thought it was Gonsalves playing with her dog upstairs. And I just find myself thinking, it's this whole thing just a lie. This reads to me like these people weren't even at this house. They're just kind of guessing what was going on. And I don't know whether you guys get the same feeling. I look at it and I think to myself, how can someone be awake and know what was going on? So they can say what time people were in the rooms, what time they were asleep. But they themselves were apparently asleep because they got woken up at 4 a.m, which to get woken up, you yourself must be asleep. And there's so many things that I struggle with when I read this. And it just makes me think how many statements in this are just made up. And it's saying like how Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were home by 2 a.m, and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m. Which, to say that, they would have both had to have been awake up until 4 a.m. to say that. So, again, I struggle. So Bethany Funk then must have been awake till at least 4 a.m. So what we're saying, she literally fell asleep at 4 a.m. The other one's waking up at 4 a.m. because she's old noises, hearing noises. The other one's fallen asleep. This just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. And again, maybe I'm reading into it too much. Maybe I've looked at it too much, and it's driving me insane. But for looking at this and reading what they had apparently said in interviews, it just seems like it doesn't make sense to me. It feels like they're either being coerced into specifically sticking to a specific timeline that puts everybody in a specific place at a specific time, but then their own statements don't work out that way. To say you're asleep, then you're woken up, but then you would have had to have been awake in order to know what was going on up to that point, because if you're asleep, then effectively when you wake up at 4, you don't know what's going on. You don't know who's where and who's in what room and what's going on. But where this is all leading is, I think, and the more I think about things, the more I conclude sort of things. And we know that from this point, after this, there was a delay. There's a delay in calling 911, and that was it's never going to be accepted in my eyes. It's never going to be something that you can say, I know why this call never happened. I know why it didn't happen, so on and so forth. And I've concluded that I think that this house was cleaned. That's what I think. I think that this house, that something happened, and if these two girls were there, then they knew exactly what happened and when it happened. Now, whether it happened around this time frame, I don't think so. I think that this perhaps happened earlier, given more time, and something else happened in that house. And I believe that why you've got people around this case who knew what had happened before this 911 call was made is because it got out. It got out to the likes of Snapchat. Now, people have quite rightly sent me multiple accounts where these kids in sororities and fraternities have failed to contact 911 because of this seemingly in the background rule that they are not allowed to go to law enforcement. They're not allowed. You try and contain it within this fraternity and sorority circle, if you like, and they deal with it. And I believe that they had people over. There was people coming, finding out what was going on, and that house was fucked. There was footprints and that everywhere, and they spent that period of time cleaning it up. And the one sole piece of evidence that I think proves this is to do with the blood in the house, where that was, and trying to understand why there wasn't enough transfer around the house and out of the house. And the only one footprint was a latent footprint outside Bethany Funk's door, as stated in this weird Alpha David. And again, it says that footprint is a latent footprint outside the door of Bethany Funk. They try and word it like, which proves this being outside her door proves the route with which the potential killer took to get out of the property. And I'm thinking to myself, well, no, not really. They wouldn't have had to have gone right outside her door to get out of the sliding door, would they? It doesn't work that way. And if Bethany Funk was standing in her doorway and they literally were outside the door, because I look at it like, for them to say that footprint was found outside her door, then that footprint was outside her door. So not on the route that goes out to the sliding door. Or they'd have just said in the living area or in the kitchen area. But to state that footprint was outside Bethany Funk's door means that there was a proximity between that footprint and that door. And what I also have a problem with is latent footprint. Latent versus patent. Patent being that there is a footprint that steps in something, like blood for instance, and then transfers the print of blood in the floor. That is a patent print. And then you have latent, which generally, a latent print would be something that's created by a barefoot. So it would be like the oils, natural oils in the foot that would not necessarily be seen with the human eye. So they would have to be treated with, with the chemicals used by these teams in order to raise that and for it to react with the oils. So for that to be a patent print means that, in my opinion, and that's a non-professional opinion, means that was cleaned. There was an attempt made to hide that print. And it was possibly the chemical or what was used in the first place in order that reacted with that. Obviously, they could have used something like luminol and it brought the blood up from that. But I believe that there was an attempt made to cover that up, to hide it. And I then have to think to myself, if they didn't find any others, because there's no mention of any other footprints, why would the only latent print be outside one of the surviving members' doors? And it just happens to be Dylan Mortensen, the one who sees the person and gives the primary statement to law enforcement. And the other one, Bethany Funk, is seemingly no part of this, even though in this affidavit she was interviewed alongside Dylan Mortensen and both of them could pretty much say what was going on up to 4 o'clock. Make that make sense. But tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. latent print outside Dylan Mortenson's door. That to me, this stinks of a cleanup. That this house has been a clean. Now, whether it was just to hide the fact that all these people from the fraternity, sororities had come in and they'd made a fucking chaos mess of it. But I need someone to answer me this question. With so many things pointing to a delay in calling 911, potential cleanup inside that house, these statements that seemingly don't make sense to me, asleep, awake, whatever, and why at the very least has there not been an investigation fully into why 911 was not called when it is a felony in this state? Let me know down below. Rant over. Keep an eye out for video 2 later on today. Because I don't know, but I think Stephen Smith's family, their legal representation has just dropped the Murdoch family well and truly in the shit. Check it out later.